to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abassi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Sometimes I really have to think about it, and you would think after doing this over 700 times that I wouldn't have to think about it, but yet I do. So good morning, good afternoon, hello, happy Monday, or whatever day you're actually listening to this. This morning, our literature in the meeting was talking about the vicious cycle that we get caught um, in our disease of alcoholism. And it reminded me of what it was like when I would wake up in the morning after minimal sleep, probably 3 hours of sleep if I was lucky, and just starting to go through withdrawal just after 3 hours. And I would have like this wine glass on my nightstand that was left, it's like half full from like passing out while I was drinking it. And sometimes in the later part of my alcoholism, that wine glass was actually sitting on top of the big book. So I've heard about that a lot. It definitely applied to me. I was still drinking when I started going to my sobriety meetings. And so there's a big ring on the top of my big book from my wine glass, which is a reminder, a very clear reminder of those times that I would just drink myself to the point of passing out and then wake up in the morning and feel this. It was like the inside of me was just trembling on the inside, like under my skin. It was just trembling and I was sweating and I was nauseous and I couldn't even resolve a single thing, like I couldn't, I'm kind of speechless because that's how I was. I couldn't think about where I was, what I should be doing. If I tried to think of anything that was in the future, it was like complete panic for me. If I would think about anything from the night before, it was complete panic. Like, oh my God, what did I do? You know? Um, it was just terrible. And then it was a vicious cycle. I would just pick up that lukewarm, or room temperature, I should say, leftover glass of wine, and just so that I could start feeling okay, start feeling normal. Somebody in my program says so I could get back to zero. That's exactly what it felt like when I would wake up in the morning. And the story was really just powerful in the way it talked about just getting into a job and just far enough that you're making a good impression and everything, and then you start drinking again and things decline very quickly. And when I had been let go, which I'm putting in air quotes, whatever they call it, and I started a new job, it was like that. Only I never even got to the point where I was already drinking again after having gone to detox and being sober for a couple of months, finding my job. I was already drinking again by the time I started working again. So it was going to be rough. It was going to be rough. And I remember being just completely hungover. And it was this feeling that I was permanently hungover. unless I got a drink. And so I started drinking while I was driving to and from work. I started drinking in my cubicle. I was drinking all the time. 24/7 I was drinking towards the end. Um, and luckily at that point I reached out for help. And the somebody grabbed a hold of it and grabbed a hold of me and didn't let go. And to this day still calls me and takes care of me. At least emotionally provides support, and always has been. And that's the boss that I used to have at the job that I needed to medically retire from. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so attached to him. And today I get to call him like a brother and a friend to me. So, as I was thinking about these things, I started thinking about, I tend to start thinking about what I didn't do, like what I could have done if I hadn't been drinking, what I could have been if I hadn't have been drinking, all the way back to college, what I could have achieved had I not been drinking like that. And as soon as I can start feeling that and start getting a little angry with myself until I think of my kids. And as soon as I think of my kids, there's no more what ifs or I wish I would have, because if anything was any different than exactly the way that it is today, I wouldn't have them. And that's enough for me. That is more than enough for me. It makes me grateful that everything happened exactly the way that it did. Um, in the story today, it was talking about a man who he was in a movie theater with a bottle of alcohol, and when the movie was over, I guess he had been in there for a few hours and hiding, I suppose, so that he could drink in peace. And he said when he left the theater, he stopped by the newsstand and picked up the paper. And when he read it, it showed him being arrested earlier that day, and getting his stomach pumped and then let go. And he had somehow made his way back to the theater. He had initially been arrested in the theater. So I thought that I was like, wow. I really like mouthed, wow. I had heard that story before, and depending on the day, each story just strikes me differently. And today I was like, can you imagine what that must have been like for him to just not know, not remember what happened earlier that day. But I can imagine what that was like because I did it. And even though mine was usually separated by the night, by the dark, nighttime, it's no different that this happened in the middle of the day for him. So he ended up going to the theater in the morning, ending up getting arrested or something, ended up having to get his stomach pumped, let go from the hospital, and then went and got more alcohol and made it right back to the theater. I mean, that is the insidiousness of the disease. Like it is just cunning, powerful, and baffling how what it can do to us. And then the story went on to talk about his experience going to AA. And it reminded me of what it was like in the beginning when I showed up in AA and felt like I was on the outside looking in. I felt like when I walked into the rooms, that everybody knew each other, everybody was friends with each other, everybody was family, and I didn't fit in. I was never going to be that. It's so hard to imagine when we're introduced to something new that in time it's going to become familiar, it's going to become comfortable, and we're going to become good at it. It's so hard to see that. But I've had time after time that happened to me in my life. And that same job that I was just talking about, that I'm medically retired from, when I first got there, I've told you this story before. When I first got there, there was an all hands that first day. And I remember sitting in there at this big grandiose conference table in this room and looking at the president up front and all of these intelligent people around me and security clearance people around me and all of this stuff. And I'm listening, and I barely understood a freaking word that came out of anybody's mouth. It was all, everybody was speaking in acronyms. And when they weren't, they were using words that I didn't understand. I went into an entirely new industry, the cybersecurity industry. And more than that, it was not passive. What I like to call, it's not passive cybersecurity, it's active cybersecurity. And that's due to the customers that we had. But it's just I remember that feeling. And then 8 years later, I was sitting in the president's office talking to him about corporate strategy, talking with the president, that same guy that was standing in front of the room. I'm talking about, we're tossing ideas, and he's looking to me for support on the corporate strategy. And I was just honored to be, I'm sure if he heard that, he would be like, okay, all right. Settle down. Honored is a little too far. But I was honored because I knew and remembered where I came from in the beginning when I didn't understand what anybody was saying. And to get to the point where I worked hard enough, I was so proud of myself that I worked hard enough to be able to sit there and gain the respect and trust of the president to talk to me about that stuff. It was just quite an experience. And in the same way, very much the same way, when I walked into the sobriety program, I sat down and I didn't get it. I didn't know what the deal was. I didn't feel a part of. I didn't understand the steps. People were like when they would share, they're like, and so, once I was able to practice my step 5, that really got me to open my mouth and talk to my sponsor so that when I got to step 9, opening my mouth was a little bit easier. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know what step 5 is. I don't know what step 9 is. So your whole entire um, paragraph that you just spoke, I don't understand it. Um, but in time, as I just kept showing up, I started to get it. I worked with other people, just like I did in my job. I worked with other people to to dissect it and analyze it and understand it, figure out it how my role in my life among my friends, family, and community can apply those steps. Just like when I was at work, how does my role, how can I impact what this company is doing? How can I have a positive impact? Just like in sobriety, I'm going back and forth. how can my sobriety and my program positively impact the community and my family and my friends and all of these things. So starting out feeling like you're on the outside looking in is so normal. It's so normal. And I've recognized that feeling to be a cue. It's a cue that I'm getting ready to experience something big. I'm getting ready to complete an entire chapter of my book. And this is just the first paragraph. That's what it felt like for me. I don't get to graduate from the program. In fact, I look at it more as I don't have to graduate. Nobody's going to push me out of the program. I get to be in it for life, and that's really great that I get to be a lifetime member because I want to be. I want to be able, oh, thank God. Thank God I can do this my whole life. You know, thank God that I don't have to stop this. This is what I wanted my whole life. I remember when I left high school, I didn't want to graduate. When I left college, I didn't want to graduate because I wanted to keep learning. And I felt like, oh, I'm going to go to my job. Now I was a little naive. I didn't realize I was going to go to my jobs and I was going to learn. But I really didn't have a lot of inspirational learning until I got to this last job before I had to medically retire. That was the level of learning that I wanted to just just sink myself into. I wanted to embrace it with all that I had because it was so cool. The subject matter was cool. Our customers were cool. The people I worked with were cool. I still talk to them today. I loved that job. And yet I had to leave. And because of my disability and my chronic pain. And today I'm in this program for living that I don't have to leave. There's nothing that can possibly happen that is going to tear me away from a lifetime of sobriety with Alcoholics Anonymous. And that feels really, really good for me. And that has opened the door. Like, I can sit back and relax and know that this spiritual experience that has been slowly generating itself around me and within me is something that I get to continue. I was thinking this morning in my second meeting, we were talking about, I think it was step 3. Um, Handing it, like turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. And I was thinking about how on the surface, kind of like I was talking about yesterday, on the surface, that seems like a really just elementary idea, something that's not very complicated it's a decision, it seems like it's a decision. And but in actuality, for me, it's a continuous decision, decision after decision. I'm constantly making that decision, just like I was talking about yesterday, to tune in, to like follow the tools of my program in order to stay on that track, stay on that station. And what I wrote down today in regard to step 3 was the idea of embracing this spiritual experience as a way to live, as opposed to my whole life wanting to have a relationship with God but not knowing how. And in that way, I would just um, articulate that as, do you believe in God or not? And it's like, yes or no. Again, that's so simple on the surface, but there's so much more. It's so much more complex. It doesn't matter. I mean, take this with a grain of salt, but it doesn't matter so much the answer to the question, do you believe in God or not? Um, what matters is, how are you living? Are you living through a spiritual experience or are you not? What are your decisions minute by minute, day by day to direct your behavior? Um, is it going towards some sort of, is it going towards honoring a higher power, something bigger than yourself or not? That's what I think is more important. Whether you call it God or not, that's your own business, I think. I mean, I'm just kind of, I just sit here and just talk off the cuff. So I don't want to lose any listeners by saying that for sure. But if you've been listening for a while, you know that it's all about the decisions that we make every day. It's not just one decision. Um, do you believe in God? It's not like for me, I believe in God. That's not the end of it. What do you, okay, so what are you going to do about it? How are you going to live? Um, Believing in a power greater than myself, which is everything outside of me, including God, which I had a very insightful friend in the program say, God is everything outside of you. And that like blew my mind. I was like, yeah. You're right. So I guess my higher power is God. It threw me off. But I like to say it like that. I like to say it that my higher power is everything outside of me. Um, because it it puts things into perspective for me. It puts my life into perspective. It puts my purpose here into perspective. It puts my passion into perspective, and it helps me understand how to live. Um, so that's it. Here we are again at the end of an episode that I have no idea how to close properly. So that's it. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.